This is apropos. Well, it is set to be his first major speech since returning to the White House more than 6 weeks ago. US President Donald Trump is set to address Congress in a few hours' time. Among the various hot-button issues he's likely to discuss: trade tariffs, the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, immigration and government spending cuts. Well, for more on what to expect, let's cross live now to our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson. Fraser, the theme of this televised address, it's renewal of the American dream. Donald Trump is already promising that this speech will be big, as he put it. What are we expecting?
Yeah, I think we can expect it to be a raucous speech. Of course, Donald Trump has got a very strong grip on the Republican Party, so senators and members of the House and their guests will all be there with rapturous applause for the president, I'm sure, and likewise the Democrats will be the opposite. There'll be maybe some jeering. I'm also hearing reports that there could be a Democrat walkout at some point during the speech as well. Donald Trump will likely tout the main things that he likes to talk about, and the key one, of course, being immigration. We've heard twice from the border czar just on Tuesday at Tom Homan at the White House talking about the level of migration at the southern border and how it's the lowest ever. So Donald Trump likely to tout those immigration figures. Of course, ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, has been on crackdowns across the country, rounding up undocumented migrants. And we know that a lot of the guests of honor from the Republican side are going to be people whose lives have been impacted by undocumented immigrants who committed crimes in the United States as well. So that's going to be a very hot button issue as well. Donald Trump likely to mention the economy, but of course, prices for a lot of things in America are still high. Donald Trump promised that he would tackle that inflation, and over the last day or so, his top trade advisor, Peter Navarro, has been saying that the inflation here is due to the remnants of the Biden economy, despite the fact that Donald Trump has now been in office for 2 months, and inflation is still impacting people. That is actually the issue that most people feel most impacted by inflation. And he's likely to mention the budget as well, no doubt. That's going to be something which has been left to the hands of the House leaders and Senate leaders, but Trump will also touch on. We're also getting some reporting from Reuters news agency, citing sources in the know, that Donald Trump this Tuesday will use the address to a joint session of Congress to announce a mineral deal with Ukraine. Now, that has not yet been signed, but Reuters are reporting that there will be an agreement on that mineral deal announced on Tuesday night as well.
And Fraser, you say the Democrats could stage a walkout. Will they be given a right to respond to Donald Trump's address? What kind of message do you think they're going to be sending tonight?
So the rebuttal this time around is falling to Elissa Slotkin, who is a first-time senator from Michigan. She's been in the House before for numerous years before that, however, but she is newly elected to the Senate, and she will be delivering the Democrats' message. And I'm told that she'll also be using it not only to act as a rebuttal towards Donald Trump's speech, but also to present the Democratic platform as well, and the Democratic manifesto. So she will be pushing back on various things that the president says. We're told that she's going to be focusing mainly on the economy and the impact of the government cuts to also the federal workers and how that impacts people's lives as well. The Democrats, it should be said, at the moment are somewhat leaderless, despite, of course, having a leader in the House and the Senate. There's not really one big figurehead who has emerged to try to lead the party at the moment, and they seem somewhat rudderless as they confront Donald Trump and his wielding of the immense power of the executive branch. So this will be a chance for people to hear from Democrats on the main stage, on the national stage, really for the first time in a couple of months. So it's a big responsibility for Elissa Slotkin, but she is seen as a rising star in the Democratic Party. I'm also hearing that she could be somebody who could be potentially eyeing a presidential run herself at some point. So definitely an address to look out for, and we'll be covering all of that tonight live here on France 24.
Fraser, you'll be joining us later on throughout the night on that speech. We'll have live coverage, as you say, from 3 a.m. Paris time. Fraser Jackson joining us live from Washington. To discuss further, we're joined now by Andrew Rudalevige, an expert on presidential power and professor of government at Bowdoin College. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme. We heard from Fraser there, Professor, about what's likely to be discussed during this address. What do you think we're going to learn about Donald Trump's priorities for the next 4 years?
Well, it's going to be, I think, a recitation of what he sees as his major achievements so far. Of course, a lot of these have been by executive order. A lot of unilateral action has taken place. The president's been very aggressive, of course, in pushing forward initiatives on everything from immigration to the culture wars to tariffs this week. Normally, these speeches are a list of legislative priorities. But President Trump's preference actually is for the legislature to sort of sit back and let him implement his programs unilaterally. Obviously, there's a budget that needs to be passed. President Trump does want very large tax cuts extended. But on the whole, actually, this will be a little bit of a strange speech, not a list of legislative priorities, but a sort of list of self-praise, I suspect, over the last 6 weeks.
And those joint addresses to Congress, they traditionally come at around this time at the start of a presidential term. But how does Trump's first 6 weeks, in many ways it's hard to believe it's only been 6 weeks, this term, how does it compare to other speeches that we would have had, do you think, or even to the speech that Donald Trump would have prepared the first time around?
Yeah, it is, of course, very common for there to be an address to a joint session of Congress around this time in a new presidency. It's not technically a State of the Union address, but it sort of comes at that same time of year. Here, new presidents are expected to lay out their priorities and what they want to achieve. Now, I think, again, for President Trump, he's going to say how much he has already achieved. It's going to be almost a looking back speech, despite the brief time that he's been in office. And again, sort of telling Congress and certainly the Democrats to get out of the way. He's going to do more, and they might as well effectively sit back and enjoy the show.
And as Fraser, our correspondent, said earlier, there is some suggestion that Donald Trump is hoping to announce a minerals deal with Ukraine following on from that disastrous performance at the White House on Friday. Do you expect to see perhaps a softening of approach towards Zelensky, particularly after he said today that he was willing to work with Donald Trump to find a way forward, to peace with Russia?
Certainly, President Zelensky is in a tough spot, right? He needs the help of the United States. President Trump and Vice President Vance made it very clear that there would be a price for that support. Indeed, we're almost asking Ukraine for reparations while they're still at war and while they're our ally, right? This is a very bizarre strategy in lots of ways. If anything, as you've seen, it's forced Europe to be more proactive and to come closer together in support of Ukraine. Trump says that pretty much everything he does is a bargaining move. He's the master in his mind of the art of the deal. And so it wouldn't shock me if he did, in fact, announce some sort of deal, whether that's actually finalized or not. Of course, we don't know. But to the degree that he feels that he has Ukraine over a barrel with his announcement that military aid was paused yesterday, he may feel this is a good time to tout his bargaining prowess, especially when there is so much criticism of his meeting with Zelensky from all sides of the political aisles.
And do you expect any further detail when it comes to the trade war that he's launched against Canada, Mexico, China? We had very strong words from Justin Trudeau earlier, and Trump then threatening to retaliate again.
Yeah, I do think tariffs are going to be an important topic. This is an area where he does not have full support of the Republican Party and pretty universal opposition from the Democratic side. A lot of the states that border Canada are red states. They're states that have a lot of economic interaction with goods going back and forth, sometimes multiple times before they're finished. And so you could really be talking about a driver of inflation that was certainly not something that candidate Trump promised. He's got to address this and try to frame the issue in his own terms. You've seen that the stock markets in the last couple of days have reacted very negatively to these announcements. He takes a lot of pride in the performance of the stock market. Certainly he did in his first term. So I think that will be an occasion for him to be maybe a little bit defensive for the only time in this speech.
And how are ordinary Americans feeling about those tariffs? For some, of course, it might be a bit of a complicated issue to grasp, but there will be people worrying about inflation, worrying about the cost of living continuing to rise.
Yeah, I think there are some people who are very, big Trump fans, and they're happy to see him try what he claims will be a long-term benefit to the manufacturing sector in the United States. But again, he did win last November in large part because of the cost of living, because people felt that the Biden-Harris administration had not done enough to address that. Tariffs, tax cuts, cracking down on immigration, these are all inflationary policies. And to the extent they're all carried out at once, you're really going to see a negative impact on a lot of people's daily lives. How much rope people will give the president? Probably more, certainly, than they gave Joe Biden. But that said, this is not going to bring down costs. This is going to be a problem. Here in Maine, where I'm living, we get a lot of our gasoline from Canada. And one of the big oil companies has already announced that it will simply pass along the tariffs in its retail prices. So as of tonight, probably filling up my car is going to cost a lot more, and that's going to be true for millions of Americans.
And that will be the concern that people will have going forward as well. Trump also, his administration, facing lawsuits regarding various moves that he's made over the past 6 weeks. Do you expect that to be something that he refers to during this address?
I think that will be an interesting question. Obviously, as you say, DOGE, so-called Department of Government Efficiency under Elon Musk, has attracted all kinds of controversy. He's moved very fast with a chainsaw. He's even used a chainsaw as a prop rather than a scalpel, right, to move forward on a lot of things that are, quite frankly, when it comes to cutting agencies that have congressional support, that are funded by Congress, that were created in law by Congress. For him to cut those unilaterally is flatly illegal. So you have attracted a lot of court cases, a lot of controversy, and the Trump administration has lost a lot of those cases so far. That has led to a lot of pushback from the administration, certainly from Mr. Musk on his own social media platform, for calls to impeach federal judges who dare to go against the president's wishes. I'm curious to see how President Trump will address that. Will he argue against following court orders? That would be a big deal constitutionally. Or will he merely complain that the courts are not giving him a fair shake? That would be more in keeping with his past practice.
We'll find out in a few hours' time. Andrew, thanks so much for being with us on the programme this evening. That's Andrew Rudalevige. He's a professor of government at Bowdoin College in the US. Well, that's it from us for now. Stay with us, though.